I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope that we delivered on what we said we could deliver on in the first class, of giving you kind of an in-depth view, a peek at what this organization is all about, the complexity of it. Also hope that you were moved by the quality of the people that work here and the level of professionalism that they exhibit day in and day out. And I say this all the time, and I truly mean it. I'm very fortunate to have people that come to work here every day where they're bouncing their steps and intimidated about what it is that they do, the impact on the community that they can have, and so forth. So that's enough by me. I'd much rather answer any questions that anyone has about any experience or uncertainty or doubt or affirmations. We can hold that. I mean, I'd like to hear what you have to say and the curiosities that you may have. If there's anything about my position on issues, please ask me now. You have this opportunity, and I'm happy to explain. Yes, sir.
I wrote a little something down so I'd remember everything. And if I take about 3 minutes. Sheriff, I could not imagine a more professional organization associated with law enforcement than yours. Your staff, equipment, and facilities are extremely impressive and something the residents of this parish should be proud of. I also believe that your department is made up of good men and women who do their job with empathy and common sense. With that said, my concerns are not with your department, but with the government source that is providing our parish with millions of dollars. There's a funny saying that you may have heard: there is always free cheese in a mousetrap. I ask that you be wary not of the equipment that the parish is given, but of the vernacular that this agency and or branch of government is using, and now you yourself are repeating. You have mentioned that the war on terror is now focused inward here on the homeland. A Fox News affiliate reported that Sergeant Dan Downing of Morgan County Sheriff's Department in Indiana admits that the increasing militarization of domestic police departments is intended partially to deal with returning veterans who are now being seen as homegrown terrorist threats. He went on to say that returning veterans had the ability and knowledge to build IEDs and defeat law enforcement techniques. In April 2009, the DHS intelligence assessment listed returning veterans as likely domestic terrorists. Just a month later, the New York Times reported on how Boy Scout explorers were being trained by the DHS to kill disgruntled Iraq war veterans in terrorist drills. The FBI has also repeatedly characterized returning veterans from Afghanistan and Iraq as a major domestic terror threat. We shouldn't be treating our veterans this way. Keep in mind, while making these inflammatory statements, the federal government is also doing the following: funding Al-Qaeda in Syria with anti-tank weaponry, small arms, and telecommunications, releasing over 36,000 illegal immigrants last year who had nearly 88,000 convictions, including 193 homicides, 423 sexual assaults, 300 kidnappings, and 1,100 aggravated assaults. They're spying on every American's emails, text messages, credit card statements, and phone calls. They're arming...
Another question?
Yes. They're arming the United States Post Office, Department of Agriculture, IRS, Social Security. Sheriff, the list goes on and on. I hope that we can ask ourselves what is happening. The hypocrisy and dangerous rhetoric of the federal government is at an all-time high. Obama and George Bush are both to blame for these policies. We have participated in the Citizens Academy because we care about our community and our families. I wish we had the luxury to sit back and say nothing, but for myself, I have 3 children and cannot afford that luxury. So when President Obama said he wanted to build a civilian national security force that is just as powerful, just as strong, just as well funded as our military, he meant it. This is the Department of Homeland Security, which has purchased over 2.5 billion rounds of ammunition and has supplied law enforcement agencies across the country with $1 million equipment. The Vietnam War was based on the Gulf of Tonkin, false flag lie, and Iraq was based on the lie of weapons of mass destruction. Now the federal government appears to be preparing for hostility with the American people. I want you and everyone to know what a false flag is, and when something terrible does happen, the American people won't fall for another lie and be herded into a war, another fear-fueled war with each other. Last time we met, you told me that if a man pulled a gun out and robbed me, he could be considered a terrorist. I don't want to believe we need to live in a manufactured state of fear created by our federal government so that we stand by and watch our Bill of Rights destroyed. I ask that you uphold your oath to the Constitution and protect our individual rights. In addition, I ask that you stand with the American people of this parish and help us not to be divided by issues of racism or intolerance. In order to protect the community, we must uphold the rights of the smallest minority, which is the individual, and not sacrifice those rights for the collective or what is deemed as the benefit of the group. War is a racket fought for special interests and corporations, and this one the feds are preparing is no different. If you don't believe me, look up the most decorated military veteran in history, General Smedley Butler. Thank you.
What's your point?
My point was, it was not a question, it was me just asking you to uphold your oath to the Constitution.
Well, I mean, I don't think that there's any risk of me not doing so. I mean, the fact of the matter is, yes, we have constitutional rights, constitutional protections. Those are all worked out in a balance of interest. And, you know, the fact that we are dealing with domestic terrorism and the fact that the dismantling of Al-Qaeda and that no longer is core AQ, our primary terrorist threat, and that now we're looking at more homegrown levels of terrorism, we can continue to get into a philosophical debate as to who's right or who's wrong. In the interim, though, people are dying, and the fact of the matter is the law is being violated.
People are dying here.
And we are charged with making sure that we seek those individuals out, that we charge them, and that they go to jail in order to have a structured and ordered society. When I get money from the federal government, there's really not any strings attached. It's a request by me. It's not a gift by them. I can participate in whatever program I desire, and the ones that I don't desire, I don't participate in. It doesn't mean that they're wrong or they're right in those programs. It's just I choose as to what best fits the challenges that I have in the community that I serve. So I think you're under a misunderstanding that there's significant strings tied to a lot of this money. There's not. In fact, more often than not, we have to prove that we are not going to violate constitutional protections by receiving this money and using it for technology that would be overbearing and overburdensome as it relates to those particular constitutional protections. There's a lot of political rhetoric that's talked about in Washington. I, for one, don't really care for Washington politics. I don't like the divisive nature of it, never have. I don't like the fact that the party controls national politics. I say this all the time, that the two-party system is the best and worst thing about this country. It's a good thing because we don't have a plurality and it's easier to reach compromise when we so desire. It's the worst thing because it's all about control. You know, we elect somebody today with a party label. He was a pretty good guy this morning, but by this evening at 10 o'clock or 8 o'clock when the polls close, and by 10 o'clock when the results come in, he's a no good rotten bastard. Just because he's got a different party label than the one that we may adhere to. I'm not one that believes that, you know, and I'm a Republican, I'm not one that believes that an idea that starts on the Democratic side of the aisle is a bad idea just because it started on that side of the aisle. I'm one that believes that we need to look at the empirical data and determine whether or not, you know, there is any validity to the program. What is it going to accomplish? Does it violate the balance of interest as it relates to the constitutional protections? You know, so I don't think there's any risk that I'm going to be one, you know, to violate as it relates to any federal money that's coming down. In fact, to the contrary, my experience has been much different. You know, I tell this little anecdotal story. We work with ATF all the time. And you know how you fill out the FFL form, the yellow form? A lot of people don't believe this, but ATF cannot go check the database in those forms unless they have probable cause to determine that there's a violation of some federal statute, can they even go run somebody's name to see what guns they purchase? Neither can I, and they won't do it at our request. It wasn't until I was in my career, 18, 19 years, that I found that out. In fact, I thought it was a little bit disingenuous. Why are we collecting these forms if we can't go and check what the hell's going on as it relates to that? We can go check about everything else that we purchase that's movable. Why all of a sudden, just because there's a Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms, that's fine. You can have the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. It doesn't mean that there's an onerous impact on that particular right to go and see what arms. In my view, that's not a constitutional protection, and I don't think it's a significant intrusion. When we deal with the mental health issues, and primarily what you're talking about, and I think you're slanting it a little bit, we even have a military court here now in Jefferson Parish for veterans, in dealing with the PTSD issues that they have when they violate. We've set up a whole different structure in criminal violations to help get counseling and everything else that they need if they violate the law. Because of their duty, their service, their honor, their loyalty to this country, we've put them in a position where they could be mentally incapacitated to some extent, and that we have to deal with that. And we recognize that very service by doing so. That's funded by the federal government. That's funded by the Obama administration. The fact of the matter is I mean, they stand up and they recognize the honor and the duty and the loyalty. So, I mean, you know, sometimes we get into this political rhetoric that's a lot to do about nothing, in my view. In an operational sense, I don't see that we're overreaching. Do we make mistakes? Yeah. Do we misspeak? Yeah. But guess what? We're human. We're imperfect. The fact of the matter is, is it fair to take those statements or those happenstances and exploit them? Yeah, it's unfair. We make mistakes. People make mistakes. You know, but we got to a point in our society where the impact of the spoken word, because of the internet, can permeate across this country, and we not only try to hold people to a literal understanding of what they say, we actually take it out of context. And they try and rip one sentence out of a 20-minute speech and try and make something out of it that it's really not. And that's probably a more significant intrusion on the rights and the liberties of a citizen than most other stuff that we're talking about. Any other questions? Any other questions about what we experience?